So unless you live under a rock or are just really good at avoiding advertisements, you've probably heard by now that Forza Horizon 4 has been released, along with Microsoft's new Game Pass. I might consider saving up for Forza since it has better looking graphics overall than The Crew 2, which is my other consideration. But after waiting for the demo to complete to see how the game runs on my Ryzen system, I was hit with a huge disappointment. The game, it looked great when you didn't move, but even at the lowest possible settings on the demo, the game is a stuttery mess. After manually overclocking the graphics to 1100 MHz, nothing changes. I overclocked my 2400 MHz RAM to 2800 MHz and still no change. I reinstalled drivers and it smoothed that a little bit, but not 100%. To be fair, when I launch the game, it gives me two errors saying that my graphics card, the Vega 8, is incompatible and that my memory doesn't suffice. Now, the graphics should theoretically be fine, but it uses some of my 8 gigs of RAM. Windows uses a couple hundred megabytes also, but the Vega 8 graphics solution uses at least a gig to a gig and a half, on my system anyways. Forza can barely run with 8 gigs of RAM already, but subtract about 1.5 gigabytes and another few hundred megabytes, that could turn my 8 gigs of RAM into at the lowest 6.5 gigs of RAM. I have seen my system memory when at full load gaming or doing any other tasks go to 6.9 gigs to 6.5, so 6.5 really isn't that far off. To test my theory, I am going to remove one of my 4 gig sticks of RAM, leaving me with 4 gigs, not including what the graphics will use up. My system, if you don't know, is a Ryzen 3 2200G overclocked at 3.85 GHz, with a Vega 8 at 1100 MHz, and of course the now 4 gigs of DDR4, now in single channel, overclocked at 2800 MHz. So here is Fortnite at mixed settings, mostly medium, with 1600 by 900 resolution, and it runs pretty smoothly. But what will happen when I take away a stick of my RAM and are then left with 3 to 2.5 for the system? Let's find out. So with 8 gigs, you saw how Forza ran, but in Fortnite, I got a low of 11 FPS, it averaged 40 to 50 FPS, and the max is 60 because that's what I capped it at. In 3D Mark Night Raid, I got a respectable score of 9,970. This benchmark was designed for integrated graphics, so that's why I went with it. The memory usage in Fortnite was much less than in Forza. Fortnite does only require 4 gigs of RAM anyways, so I wasn't really surprised. Now let's see what happens when I pull 4 gigs of RAM from my system. So again, in Fortnite, I was actually really surprised that I had 200 to 800 megabytes left when gaming at medium settings. The game probably got a low of 1 FPS or 5, a max of maybe 40, and it averaged 20 to 30 FPS. So far my theory seems to be correct. Just opening up 3D Mark, I'm now not greeted with Night Raid, which I ran previously, but now on the homepage it recommends Skydiver, which, don't get me wrong, totally makes sense when I have 8 gigs of RAM, but after running Night Raid, I now get a score of 7,393. The frame rates in the GPU tests weren't that bad actually, but the lesser RAM did make the 60 FPS scenes go to 30. Now opening up Forza 4, I dismissed the 2 errors and walked away for maybe a minute or two. When I came back, the game hadn't loaded at all. In fact, my whole system froze up. I could have just hit the reset button by then, but I think my question has been answered by now. In conclusion, if you're looking to play the new Forza on the 2200G, theoretically the graphics solution should be able to handle the game, but after doing some brief testing, if you only have 8 gigs of RAM in your system, then another 4 will definitely help smooth things out. Well guys, if you enjoyed the video, hit that like button. If you didn't, you know where to go. While you're there, consider subscribing to the channel. Anyways, thanks for watching and I'll see you later.